Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Zero to One. You may have joined us yesterday and we touched on the topic of sales and how you can listen more and hopefully sell better. And we're really excited to kind of continue that today with a very important topic, something close to my heart, given that it's an area that we focus on a lot as well, or I've done in my career as well. But really excited to welcome Zal here, who's going to share on the topic called Once Upon a Pitch. So how you can incorporate more storytelling into your sales and you may have been joining us just a moment ago and heard a little of the preamble, but one of the things we really want to reiterate to people is that whether you're a founder, whether you're someone who has ambitions to be an entrepreneur, maybe you're currently working in a corporate environment, or maybe you're a freelancer, solopreneur, something of that nature, the reality is at some point in your current life, you're going to have to do some element of selling. You're going to have to try to convince people, persuade people on what it is that you want them to do, right? Is it to maybe become a customer? Is it to try something? Is it to be an investor? Is it to acquire your services that you offer and things like that? So we really hope that this session can be, very, very useful for everybody in that sense across the Doerscircle member base. And as Zal had mentioned just before we started the recording, we really encourage some interactivity. So please feel free to put any comments in the chat. You may also wish to use the Q&A button at the bottom, and the Q&A button will send the question straight to us. And Zal had just mentioned, if you weren't here yet as well, that will jump straight into the questions as when they come in. Zal, you should also see it pop up, but what we'll do is Han will tee up the question to you, and then we can get straight to it. So if there's if there's one popping up, and I know you're probably in your flow and you're talking, then we'll subtly try to interject in that sense.
Sure.
But yeah, we obviously love any input from everybody. I can see there's a few familiar faces here. I see some new faces too, so welcome to those to the call as well. And let's get started. Yeah, when you're ready, Zal.
Great. Let me just I'll share my screen. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much, Jamie, for that introduction and for letting me, be a part of this. And only just want to reiterate what Jamie said about the fact that everybody is always pitching. And it might not be at work. You might not think that, but you might be at home with your husband or wife, and you're deciding where to go for dinner. What is it that you feel like having? How are you going to convince her that maybe we should go check out this new place? Or trying. I mean, if anybody has kids, you understand what master negotiators they are, and you're constantly in a negotiation and trying to manage that. So, I think everybody really thinks about sales and pitching as a very work focused, and of course that's what it is, and that's where most of the effort and energy goes in terms of where we think about it. But really, as I said, life's a pitch, right? And if you want to run your own business, you need to be able to persuade people and convince them to believe in you, to believe in your vision, and to go with you. And so that's where some of these skills are pretty useful. So, oops, sorry. Who am I? So just to give you a bit of a background, been an entrepreneur, founder of B2B SaaS companies for the last 15 plus years, multiple tech companies, invested in multiple businesses. And now I spend my time working with founders, CEOs, leaders, either as a coach, as a founder coach, as well as a pitching and sales coach. So I help businesses understand their value proposition, understand their go-to-market and their sales strategy, and then how to take that forward to earn revenue. So on the left, you'll see some of the companies that I've consulted with and worked with. On the right, those are some of my clients that I've sold to. I also have and host one of the top 10% climate podcasts in Asia, where I speak to founders and leaders in the climate and sustainability space. So if that's something you're interested in, Impact at Scale. Check it out. Like and subscribe. So what are we going to cover? We're going to talk about why storytelling is so powerful, and how often, especially in a business context, it might be not utilized or maybe underutilized. I'm going to give you 3 simple frameworks that you can think about applying. And these aren't my frameworks. These are, tried and tested frameworks, and I'll give you them so that you can take them into your next pitch or your next meeting. I'm going to give you some presentation tips, a little bit more than just the basic tips, and then some pitching tips as well. So, just real quick, and pop it in the chat. Does anybody know what these things have in common?
I'm trying to work it out now as well. I'm looking at it.
So there's a diamond ring, there's a Santa, it's countries and money.
What's your guess, guys?
No guesses? No, just looking in the chat. No guesses. So they are all actually stories. And some of these are actually some of the most powerful stories that we've ever told, because, I'll start with a diamond ring. Anybody that's married or thinking about getting married or, was married, know that they have to buy an engagement ring, whether you're a man or a woman. It doesn't matter what part of the world you're in. It doesn't matter your culture, your religion. This is a very understood cultural norm. Now, the fact is that engagement ring was made up, and it was a marketing campaign created by a diamond company. So they created a story to make people convinced that they should buy rings. And all of a sudden now everybody, well, at least 50% of the planet is buying rings for the other 50% of the planet. So that's quite a successful marketing campaign. Santa Claus, don't need to tell you, not real, but a story that is told to children, and one that has got such global prevalence. And the funny thing about Santa Claus as well, and many people don't know, Santa Claus was actually green. He was German. He was Sinterklaas. The reason why he's red is because Coca-Cola decided that Coke wasn't affiliated enough with Christmas, and so wanted to be more associated with that. So they started marketing Santa wearing the red of Coca-Cola, and now you can't think of him in anything else, right? So the last 2, these are some really powerful stories. When you think about a country, what is a country? It's something that is relatively recent in human existence, maybe the last 150, 200 years, right? Before that, you had kingdoms, you had, all kinds of different things. But a country is something that is made up. It's a story that we tell ourselves in our mind because countries have changed and kingdoms have changed. It's the same with money. I don't know. I know we've got quite a few people here that have logged on from India. Many of you will remember a few years ago, India went through demonetization, right? And all of a sudden, a whole bunch of banknotes were told, hey, these aren't legal anymore. Stop using them, right? And it goes to show you how quickly your mindset can shift in terms of understanding what the value is. So something that 2 weeks ago was very valuable, all of a sudden you change the story, not valuable. So why am I saying this, right? So to talk about the power of story. Sorry. So don't take my word for it. Gary Vaynerchuk, very famous guy, marketing guru. Storytelling is by far the most underrated skill in business. Yuval Noah Harari, who I took a lot of this stuff from. Humans think in stories rather than facts, numbers, or equations. The simpler the story, the better. And my favorite.
Oh, so sorry.
Pardon?
I love his book as well. Sapiens, good book.
Oh, incredible, incredible book. Just what you think and everything you know about human history and change it. And the same thing about Bill Gates, that if you want to get people to care about climate change, tell them about a little girl who can't play outside because it's too polluted, So I love this little graphic because I think it really illustrates what a story can do and how powerful it can be. And now, you guys don't seem like a very voice like a very loud group, but I'll ask you, can anybody tell me what the objective of a story is?
Well, that's a tough one, you know. I'd
Well,
From my side, I'd say maybe to delight, maybe.
well, actually, oftentimes it's just to make it as easy as possible for the audience to understand what you are trying to tell them.
We got a couple in there. So we had to convince and inspire action and to share something as well. And Jay said he's just read Sapiens as well. So we've got a
Amazing, amazing. To convince and inspire for action. But you just want the audience to understand what you're trying to tell them, right? It's really that simple. And I think a lot of people lose sight of this. They make it more complicated than it has to be. So the power, and look, why this is so important is it does connect on an emotional level in most cases for us, right? And we're able to then take these very complex facts and figures and make them mean something. Facts and figures, they all tend to blur when we hear them. Once you hear a story that really connects, that stays with you. That's why we go to the movies, right? That's why we watch TV. That's why we're so entertained. It's the story that grips us. Nobody is going to a movie and just reading, statistical data. It's not that fun. So there is an actual neuroscience behind this. You fire your dopamine receptors, right? So you get a reward transmitter. When you hear stories, that we can't help but put ourselves in that story. It's like when you watch a movie and you watch James Bond or whatever, and you finish the movie, you walk out, everybody starts thinking a little bit like they want to be James Bond or how they would act, because you see yourself in that position. And that's why story can be so powerful, especially when it comes to selling. There are emotional triggers. I don't need to tell you, how emotional stories can be. I've seen TV commercials, and it's incredible when you see a TV commercial that can make people cry because you have like 20 seconds, 30 seconds to convey such a strong emotion in a commercial. And if you have time after this, go to YouTube and search for Thai life insurance commercial, and you will find some of the most heart-wrenching emotional triggers in a 30-second video. It's incredible. Let's see. So there's some very powerful examples of storytelling from brands that you can maybe pay attention to. I don't know if any of you remember Dove's Real Beauty campaign. It was famous because they had no models, they had real people. And the whole point of that was just to say that this is for real people, right? This is what real people use our product, and we want to put them in here. There's obviously Nike. I probably don't even need to talk about this because their ad campaigns are so emotionally powerful. And oftentimes they never show you the shoes, but you understand what Nike stands for as a brand, and that's what you associate with. And Patagonia, another brand that they're famous for their commitment to environmental activism. And so that resonates in every single messaging that they do, right? They're able to push that message. They even have one message which says, don't buy this jacket. Instead, reuse, recycle, do all the things you can, and then buy it. So I would love if we could take 2 minutes for some people to put in the chat, maybe a story related to a product or service that they love. If anybody has those feelings, and to kind of talk and to see the connection with those, and if not, we can move on. But if anybody's had a really great brand experience or a product experience, and you want to share that product, you could talk about the story that was related to that. Feel free to unmute.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you want to say it verbally, you can. I can unmute you. Just put your hand up, raise the hand on the bottom, and then I'll unmute you. Can be anybody.
And apologies if I'm going a little fast, guys. Normally, what I'm about to do, with a client, we will do that over like 4 or 5 different workshops and work on their pitch and how they're going to present. And I'm trying to put all of that into 1 hour. So it kind of goes a bit fast, but
okay, we've seen somebody mention WhatsApp. So is in the story of WhatsApp? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Is there an interesting story there? Or do you just want to talk to somebody on WhatsApp?
I mean, the story of WhatsApp is an interesting one, obviously, just like how what they built, and then obviously then coming under the Facebook umbrella as well, and Meta now, I guess, in that sense.
All right, well, maybe we'll move on from here. So there's a quote. I don't love it. That's why it's here. And it's simple product does the job. The story around WhatsApp. I see what you're saying. So Intel Turbo Boost. The Turbo Boost enables the processors to run above its base operating frequency via the dynamic control of the CPU's clock rate. Is there anybody in this room that can tell me what that means?
Actually, maybe a couple of people could, but I have an idea, I guess. I used to build computers when I was a kid, but this was probably about 25 years ago.
So yeah, you know, for the thing with this is this was clearly written by someone who is very proud of the base operating frequency and the dynamic control that it was allowed, you know, but it was clearly written by someone who is coming from a very product, right? However, Intel's exclusive Turbo Boost technology makes note of what you are doing on your computer, playing games or watching videos, and adjusts the performance to give you a boost when you need it and to scale it back when you don't, which extends the battery life of your notebook. See, that statement was written from the point of view of the customer or the audience. And that story that it told resonates with the audience because it tells the audience things that matter to them, what they're doing. You know, they're playing games, they're watching videos, they want longer battery life. They don't really care about a CPU's clock rate or what it allows the processor to do. It just all they care about is what it does for them. And that's the same whether you're speaking to an investor, whether you're speaking to a partner, whether you're speaking to a customer. You have to remember that everybody is always thinking, what's in it for me? And the number of founders that get up there and they talk about their features, that no one cares. You know, I hate to break this to you. They only care what those features allow them to do for themselves. So this is a great example. I ask people and it kind of trips them up, which is like, you know, what did Uber fundamentally change? Right? They weren't the first taxi service, right? They weren't even the first service that allowed you to call for a taxi. That's been around for a long time. Most taxi services in the UK, you have mini cabs. In Singapore, you you can call them and a taxi would turn up, right? No problem. So what is it that Uber changed? What was so revolutionary about what they did? You know, and I'll tell you, they were able to tell you a story about your ride better than anybody else. Because before, when you used to call a taxi, you didn't know whether one was coming in 20 minutes or 2 minutes. And you didn't know how to prepare. You didn't know how far away it was. You didn't know what was coming. You didn't know how long it was going to take. Uber changed all of that by being able to show you your car is coming, who your driver is, the route you're going to take. They removed all of that and they gave you a much clearer story around your trip. And that's part of the reason why people wanted to use it, right? Because it made them feel so much safer, right? That just doing something like this, for example, you know, I know when I travel, Uber is such a godsend because you don't have to negotiate with a taxi driver. You don't even have to explain to a taxi driver where to go. You put it in, and you know that he's going to get directed there, right? It's the story.
Yeah.
So this, I hope we have audio. Hopefully this works. I just want to share a video. This is probably one of the best product launches ever. And just pay attention to some of the words that he said. This is Steve Jobs. Sorry, that wasn't clear to everybody.
Or can't quite hear the sound, I'm afraid. If there is sound. I have seen this before, yeah. Don't know how do we get the audio from there?
Now, did you guys hear that?
No, I couldn't hear that one, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, basically, what he says is that this is iPod, and it has 1,000 songs and goes right in your pocket. Now,
Yeah.
for some of the younger people in the audience, that was what your iPhone used to look like. you know, and I know you probably don't remember or don't even know what an iPod is, but at the time it was revolutionary. The idea that you could carry like 5,000 songs in your pocket when at the time the alternative was a CD.
Yeah, with
Um,
18 songs, maybe if you're lucky.
you know, and the idea here is that he didn't talk about RAM, he didn't talk about hard drive space, he didn't tell you how impressive the technology was, they didn't tell you how they had to literally reinvent screws so that they would be as thin as they wanted them to be to fit in there. All he spoke about was what the client wanted to hear, that you can fit 5,000 songs and it goes right in your pocket, right? So he knew better than almost anybody how to communicate to his customers. And that's something that I think many founders don't practice. They think that it's going to come naturally, and they think that just because you know your product well enough, but you need to practice that. It's a skill like anything else. So, you know, let me start with the most obvious, right? Know your audience. Everyone is a person. Now, what do I mean by that? Everyone is a person. It means that when you approach someone, don't believe that their goals are the same goals as the company's. Usually, a person that works in a company, their goal is to be promoted, to get a bonus, to make sure their boss thinks they're doing a good job. Maybe they're worried about what their next job is. Rarely is it really their concern about the profitable efficiency of that company. As long as they're getting their salary, they're usually pretty happy. So you have to understand that when you're going and selling, right? Depending on what you're selling, you need to know how to manage that person. Who is in the room? What are their roles? Have you developed stories and pitches for each person? How much do they know? Do they know what the problem you're solving is? And is it a big problem for them? Do you empathize with them? Look, you know, I don't care if you're you know, if you play for the Indian cricket team, or if you're a Bollywood superstar, or if you're a supermodel. Everybody thinks their job is tough, right? Everybody thinks their job is difficult, right? So do you empathize with what they're going through? Do you empathize with the problems that they have? And are you going to help them achieve what they want to achieve? I don't know if you've noticed, none of what I've said on this slide has anything to do with you. It's not even, I haven't even talked about your product. It's just all about what you can do for them, right? So I came up with this. Well, sorry, I did not come up with this. What I'm sharing is it's called buyer personas. I've noticed that a lot of founders don't even do these, and that's where you put in data to understand this sort of semi-fictional representation of your ideal customer. Because unless you know who you're speaking to, you cannot develop the stories around them. So if you look at this, you've got, you know, the basics of age, gender, location, but there's also behaviors, right? How do they buy? Where do they buy? Where do they shop? What do they read? What do they like? You know, what motivates them? What are they worried about? What are their fears? You really want to think about this person and understand who they are. You know, I've got some persona-based storytelling. Nike's Just Do It, of course. Hotspot has a great HubSpot. Sorry, not HubSpot. HubSpot has a great marketing campaign around getting solo entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs to use their software. And it's done by very specific persona targeted content that they write. If you Google almost anything about sales and marketing for startups, within the first page, I almost guarantee you there's going to be a HubSpot article.
Yeah, you're right on that, Zal. So we've got some
Oh,
questions coming in, by the way. So as you said, I just thought we'd jump
oh,
over
amazing.
questions. I'll let Han take that bit.
What do you think the most important factor relating to a persona? It, you know what? I would think that if you're able to understand what their hopes and dreams are and what their fears are, it really goes a long way in being able to understand how to communicate and speak to them. Oh, great. We got a lot of questions coming in. Why is it many founders don't use design thinking, blue ocean, lean canvas? Honestly, I think most people don't even know that they exist or don't know to try them, really. Because, you know, most entrepreneurs typically they think they've got a problem, or they discover a problem that they think they have a solution for, and they just go all in on that solution. And so I think usually people start using these kind of frameworks when they're a little bit more experienced and know that not every problem is big enough for a solution, and not every solution is suited to every problem. So to get onto some of the storytelling frameworks. The hero's journey. This is probably the most common storytelling framework. And basically, this is the basic kind of flow for the hero's journey. There's a normal life before the adventure. There is a challenge or an event that changes that normal life and takes the hero out of their comfort zone. Now, let me put this in a business mind. The hero in this case is your client, right? So they're going about doing their business normally. There is something, maybe it is a regulatory change, maybe it is a environmental change, an economic change. There's going to something that's going to change. They're going to ignore it, and then they're going to meet a mentor that's going to guide and support them through this change. That mentor should be your product, and whatever it is, right? If you're, if you're a fitness instructor and your hero is a client that's overweight, they want to do something about that. There's a bit of annoyance, but it's your program that's going to help them get to their goal, right? And obviously, there's challenges. You have to overcome things. Nothing comes easy. And then there's the victory of the reward of your goal, and then home back to the normal world. So if that sounds familiar, it is because it is basically the plot line of almost every major movie for the last 50 years, right? So this is something to keep in mind more at a higher level when you are thinking about how do you place your client in the mindset of the hero's journey. All right, we have a question here. Do you think more and more customers are now expecting shorter and crisp messages? Is that because of all the short messages posts that are getting used to driving shorter conversations? Look, honestly, I think everybody is losing their concentration time. There was a recent study that came out that it seems humans now have a shorter attention span than a goldfish, and that's a bit concerning. So I think we all have it. I also think the way that our brains work, we get so much marketing material thrown at us that if you are not speaking to them and you are not relevant to them and relevant to a problem that they are going through, they're just going to ignore you. Do you think there's an underrated framework? Yeah, other than the hero's journey, there's quite a few. And the next one that I'm going to go to is the pyramid principle, right? So the pyramid principle, I find this to be very useful when it comes to email, proposal documents, proposal pitches, presentations, and the way that the pyramid principle. This is a storytelling framework where it's all structured very hierarchically, right? So McKinsey came up with this, and basically the way it works is you have the key messages at the top, 10% very early on. You tell them what is it that you want to tell them, what's the goal of the presentation. You have supporting arguments, and then you have supporting data. Now, if this sounds a little familiar, it's basically the same format that newspaper writers write. And I don't know if people remember newspapers, big things made of paper, used to read them. They were like online news before online was a thing. But that's how all newspaper articles are structured. So if you read the first 2-3 paragraphs, you kind of get a gist of what happened. And then the further down you go, the more detail and the more information you get, right? So typically if things are very technical, this is a great strategy to employ because you get the key messages at the very beginning, which are the headlines and why this is important and why you need to know this. And then you can see the data and you can see the arguments further on. So how does this work in business? As I mentioned, you're grabbing the attention at the top with a strong lead and highlighting the key value propositions. And then you also want to think about objections and concerns along the way, right? That's all got to be in the sort of top bit. And from there, you want to demonstrate success stories. Now you're coming into the middle, case studies. And then the last bit is sort of what does it take to onboard? What are the next steps? And how do you close with a call to action? This is another one, and this is very interesting. So, and, but, therefore. So this is the third. There's only 3 techniques. This is the third, the final one. You're not supposed to teach people more than 3 things. So 3 is the max. Here we go. ABT. And, but, therefore. Now this helps you keep your audience engaged. It helps you create the flow, and it also makes you keep things very concise, right? You can do this within a story. You can do this within an email, a presentation. It doesn't matter. So basically what it does is you set up the first scene with the and, then you introduce the conflict with the but, and then you provide the resolution or the solution with the therefore, right? So and introduces the context or background information. It's setting the stage. It's basically your scene one. But is the challenge or the conflict, the tensions, and grabbing the audiences. That's scene two in a movie, typically. Or sorry, act one, act two, and then act three is the resolution of the movie. Not scene, but act. And so you can see this in some examples, again, from the movies, right? A young hobbit finds a magical ring that belongs to an evil sorcerer. And the ring, which can control the world, can only be destroyed in the evil place that it was created. That's the current scene. But the evil sorcerer is searching for the ring. Therefore, a ragtag company of hobbits, a dwarf, and an elf set off on a perilous stealth mission to destroy the ring. Another one, Star Wars. Again, you can see that when you use this framework, it really helps you get rid of anything that's unnecessary. So this can be very helpful when you're sending an email and you want to make your information as concise as possible, right? So how about you guess this one? I'll give you a pitch. Millions of people call or hail taxis every day, even with the hassles of waiting or overcharging. And many people would be happy to make some money driving people in their cars. But there was no safe, reliable, or easy way to connect passengers and drivers. Therefore, we built an app to let you easily book a safe, predictable ride from an available driver. I'm pretty sure that everybody knows what I'm talking about here. Right? Exactly.
Yeah, we got it in the comment there.
And so, I think where if you have a startup, try to think about how you can put your pitch in this format, because this will be, this becomes the basis of your 2-minute pitch. It becomes the basis of your 3-minute, your 5-minute. You just can expand and contract. So we're going to go into some presentation tips. Something that I especially when you're out pitching, right? And whether you're pitching on stage or whether you're pitching in a meeting room, understand that you are pitching, right? And so emotions, attitude, it all matters, and it comes through the body language. And I can't tell you like how many people I've seen when they're basically giving a talk about their product and they're talking like this, they're pitching and they're so scared and, and they're just not being aware of how they look. I was at a presentation the other day and this guy was pitching his company and he did the entire pitch staring at the floor in the passageway between the 2 rows of chairs. So he was just staring at a spot on the floor. I don't know who told him this. I don't know why he did it, but the body language is not strong. It's not confident. You don't build belief that this person knows what he's talking about and cares what he's talking about if he's not using strong body language. So just be very mindful. One bit of advice I would give you is film yourself pitching and watch it back. And then you can kind of notice some of the things that you do.
We have a question as well, by the way.
So, sorry, I missed that.
From Evelina. This one went in the Q&A bit. I can read it out. So since we teach AI to write stories, pitches, etc., how confident can we be that AI is delivering the message across the room in an impactful way? And what about the negative impacts on our cognitive abilities to tell a story and sound confident, in your opinion? Quite a long one. But yeah.
I mean, there's quite a lot in there. And I don't really know that I'm necessarily the best person to say this, but from what I understand, you're asking about AI's ability to reiterate what we mean.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Evelina can elaborate on her question in the chat, but I think what she means is we're now obviously using AI on a day-to-day basis for kind of copywriting and storytelling in that sense. So I suppose it's then how confident are we in that sense? I mean, just to jump forward in that sense, I guess what you're showing here in these slides from my point of view is these are frameworks that don't necessarily require using technology in that sense. It's about just thinking about how you apply it. Of course, AI might help you sense check it, proofread it in that sense, but in that point of view, I think you could still be quite confidently get a lot out of this without having to.
Well,
for.
what I'm hoping here is that you have an understanding of uh, particular frameworks that can be applied to communication situations, right? So depending on whether you're doing an email or a presentation or a pitch in front of a room of 1,000 people, you can apply a different communication framework to get your point and your story across. Because as I said at the very beginning, the whole point of a pitch or the whole point of a story is to make sure that the audience understands what you're saying. I've literally, I came from National University of Singapore just now before this, and I'm working with their founders over there, and they're some of the smartest. They're all PhD students, and they have very incredible technology, but they're not very good at expressing why that technology matters to the wider world. Right? They know what it does. They're not very good at selling a vision of how that technology is going to change the world. Right? And I think that I don't think AI is able to do that yet. Maybe it will, I'm sure, but right now, to have a vision of where a product can go or a vision of where a company can take you into the future, I don't think AI is there yet.
And so I just want to add one more thing, Zal, on that, the last point, which is about the negative impacts. I think it's just comes out of what you just said, is that your body language can reflect how confident you are. But if you're using just technology to write the whole thing for you, then it will also himp it, it's going to make it harder for you to be able to communicate that because it's not come from you writing that in that sense. So how can you confidently deliver something that's not really had that input from your side in that sense? So I think that that can also be, have an impact across
And
not.
I think we need to keep using our brains, right? Like if the AI, if you start letting the AI do all the thinking for you, then it's not going to be long before that AI is replacing you in whatever it is that you're doing. But if you're using the AI to say, hey, I'm coming up with original ideas, I'm coming up with original concepts, I need you to edit them or fact check them or whatever, then that's great. But if you're using AI to write your emails and to do everything, then maybe you have to question what value is it that you're bringing?
Yeah, fair. And sorry, just also great comments from Jonathan as well, I can see in the chat. So thanks.
Technical by language structure. And I mean, I don't know if you guys have noticed. I don't know if you've noticed. Like, I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, and basically, anytime I read someone's LinkedIn post, if I see more than one of those hyphens, those dashes,
Yeah,
I
and
know
that.
that this was written by ChatGPT. And it's such a dead giveaway because in every single LinkedIn post that it writes, it puts that thing. It also has adopted it's also adopted a structure of ending the post, which I've noticed as well.
Mm.
Like it tends to lead off with it's not a this, comma, but a blah, 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 blah.
Yes,
And,
yes,
and almost all of them end it. So you start becoming very aware very quickly, and people lose a lot of credibility.
agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so I also want to talk about voice. I think this is something that people don't think about at all because this is the instrument of your pitch. This is what people are going to hear. This is how people are going to communicate. So pace and timing. And why I say this is a lot of founders I work with, when you get them on a stage, they got 3 minutes. They literally are trying to say the words as fast as possible so they can get off the stage as quickly as possible. And if you don't speak at a reasonable cadence, people will not understand what you are saying. So confident people don't speak quickly. Confident people speak slowly because they know exactly what they are going to speak. The amazing thing about speaking slow, when you lower your speech rate or when you slow it down, you get rid of all the ums, the ahs, and the filler words because you are taking your time to choose the next word. Those come automatically. You don't think about them because your brain is just filling the space for the next word. But if you slow it down, that means you take away all of that. And as soon as you take away all the ums and ahs, you sound 10 times more confident. So yeah, that's what I was saying. Avoid the vocal fillers. I'm doing a bad job of it right now, but try to smile as much as possible. That also helps. It makes you look friendly. I know I have a bad tendency to look like I'm always frowning when I do this. And that's something that I'm also working on.
It's okay. I feel the warmth in your voice, don't
and also, be enthusiastic. The number of founders that after they pitch me, I ask them, I'm like, do you even like what you do? and they're like, oh, it's my life. I'm so committed to it. I'm like, I'm not getting that at all, right? You look like a person who's been sent up there against your will, to pitch. And they'll usually tell me some version of, oh, I don't like speaking in front of people, or, oh, it's not my job, or, oh, some excuse that they have. But I'm like, people in the room feed off your
Yeah.
enthusiasm, you know? Like nobody goes to a rock concert where the lead singer's like, is everybody having a good time? I mean, that's so great. Please show me a good time, right? Because they would not feel enthusiasm. So you have to show that with your enthusiasm. You have to show why they should care, why it's important, why they need to listen to you. Right. So this is a cross between meetings and pitches, depending on the situation that you're in, right? But how to sound confident, you want to use confident language. And by confident language, I don't mean like, we're going to get this done now. No, it's more about saying like, be sure of yourself. I grew up with in a British school and a British school system, and the Brits I find are the most famous undersellers in the world. Oh yes, it might really make a little small change when really it's going to change your life. But they downplay everything, and the Americans are the opposite. They'll tell you it's going to change your life when really it's just like a hamburger. So you want to be
Guilty.
more American. You want to use a bit more of the confident language because these people need to buy and believe in you. Smile, try to use first names. That helps. And the reason why, if you're in a meeting, your name is literally the most important thing to you, but almost meaningless to everybody else, right? And so when you use that in meetings, when you use that person's name, they have no other choice but to perk up. I mean, there's a hilarious story of the current president of the United States. And if they want him to read briefing documents, they actually had to put his name like every 3 lines so that he would be like, oh, okay, this is what I should be reading. And it's quite funny. That's just how important that is, right? Don't ramble either. Don't say things just for the sake of saying things. Make sure that everything you say has a point. And if you're done with your points, you're done speaking. I would do this, but I think we're running out of time, so we'll move on. Just to get a bit more pitching confidence, because I know people are worried about this, and it's probably the number one question I get is like, how do I get more confidence on stage? Dressing the part, super important. You want to make sure that you look good. You want to make sure that you feel good. I remember Jerry Seinfeld saying in a documentary that when he put on his suit, that was his suit of armor. He would get on stage, he would put on his suit, and he'd be ready to do his job. That was his job, right? It doesn't seem like it, but that's what he got up every night to do, and that's how he worked. So, what you wear matters. This is just from formal on the left to informal on the right, just to give you an idea. Same for the men. I think in Asia, you can probably, I don't really see many people in Asia wearing 3-piece suits. A little too hot in this part of the world, but you can kind of tone that down. This is something, and this is something that I find fascinating. There was a study, it was done by Amy Cuddy. She also did a fantastic TED talk on it about power poses. And the reason why I find this fascinating is some of the most impressive people that whether they're athletes or entertainers or speakers, they will have some sort of a power pose ritual before they go on stage, because it makes you feel stronger. It makes you feel like you can take on the world. You can do whatever you want. And, maybe that means just going to the bathroom 5 minutes before your meeting, looking yourself in the mirror and giving you that cheer that you need to get yourself up and going. The reason why I'm sharing this is actually this picture here of this lady who's blind. What's really interesting is she's just won the Olympics, Paralympics, gold medal. And she has never had sight before. However, instantaneously and completely naturally, she puts up her hands in victory. Having never seen that happen, having never seen anybody do this before, she just knew how to do it instinctively, right? There is something very powerful about these poses, and they kind of get you ready. I know somebody who's a world famous speaker. He's on stages with Barack Obama. He has a ritual to psych himself up. Tony Robbins, if you're familiar, he has a ritual every time he steps out. He psychs himself up. He gets himself into that state. Now, you might be saying, hey, I don't present to 5,000 people, but you're presenting to 3 people. You're presenting to 4 people. It doesn't matter. You're presenting, and you want to get yourself in that high energy state that makes people excited to do business with you. This is a great example because, you look at the people on the top and you look at the people on the bottom, they're the same people, but just by virtue of how they are standing, you feel different things about them, right? It just goes to show you like what a difference your body energy and how you're standing can make, right? So mirroring, this is a very interesting technique that, it's kind of a secret weapon for sales. And what it means is when you mirror someone, you are subconsciously telling that person, we are the same. We are connected. And humans are wired for connection. We are wired to figure out, how do I know you? Where are we the same? What, that familiarity, because that makes us feel comfortable, right? So you can do body language, you can match their tone of voice, you can adjust the words, you can, there's different ways you can mirror people. And they're what it does is it builds rapport. It's increasing engagement. Look at this is a great example of 2 people. You can see here, both their legs are crossed, both their hands are in their waist. They're both leaning in towards each other. It's just, lots of positive mirroring that's happening here, right? This is very useful. In fact, if you go on dates and you want to be signaling to that person that, hey, I like you and we're good, you kind of mirror what they're doing. But be mindful, right? Because like with everything in life, too much of it starts looking a bit weird, starts looking a bit creepy. So you want to be very mindful as to how you are doing this. And then for me, no conversation would be finished without the power of questions. And I'll just end on this because if you're in sales, if you're a founder, if you're trying to understand your customer better, you better have those 5 to 10 questions that you ask every customer that lets them sort of open up and tell you their problems, right? So you want to be doing open questions. I don't know if everybody knows the difference, but basically a closed question is a yes, no answer. Doesn't really give you any information. An open question really gives you a lot of information, right? So, did you enjoy the presentation versus what were your key takeaways from the presentation, right? It's a very different answer that you get and the amount of information you get as well. We can skip over this. So we've got about 6 minutes left. I thought I'd leave that for some Q&A. And if you want, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. And also, if you're interested in climate and sustainability or not, you can also check out my podcast. And please let me know if you got any questions. I'll check in the chat. I haven't seen that recently.
While that's happening, I did have a question from earlier. I'm guilty now of being late on that one, but when you mentioned earlier on about how, to build a persona of your potential client or customer or what it might be, and you had a bunch of really great questions in that sense, like how would, I don't know, someone who's not particularly technical go about getting those answers in that sense, like from your point of view? Are there any tools or anything like that that you'd recommend
It's
asking?
a good question. And it's not easy, right? Because the other thing is, like, don't forget, this is a semi-fictional character. So he doesn't really exist. But I think the way that I've always done it is by speaking to customers and understanding those customers themselves. And you start to pick up sort of some of the patterns, and I agree that if your job is the CTO, maybe you're not going out and speaking to customers every day. All right, fine. But there should be someone in your sales team and your account management team or someone that should be able to go out and have these conversations. I think somebody's put a bunch of questions in the chat that I missed. Let's see.
It was a bit.
It's not about speaking from the heart. It's about speaking from the heart, not from the head. A lot of founders are all hype and performative, might work in the US, but not in the UK. Yeah, that's true. Look, there is something about, coming from the heart. And I agree that's important. But I will also tell you that I coach a lot of people who are in sustainability and climate. And those people are all heart. They're all passion. They're sacrificing their lives to make the planet better. but I'm telling you that that doesn't always make them great salespeople. It doesn't make them great just because they're passionate. You know, passion can often turn into almost like a lecture and or being accusatory, and then sometimes you have clients that are defending their position. It can be difficult for them to ever then want to buy. Yeah, I think your point about Americans saying awesome, British saying it's not too bad. Yeah, not too bad is about the highest praise you'll get where somebody's talking about your dinner.
Yeah, it's all right.
Um,
Yeah.
as an Italian, I stand by using body language and tones daily, not for my presentations. We definitely can get the message across one way or another. Italians and Indians are very similar. We use a lot of hands. The number of glasses that I've knocked over at dinners because I got excited and was talking too much. Somebody else put down here, no hands in pockets. Yes, 100% no hands in pockets. If you don't know what to do with your hands, the classic is clasp them in the front or put them in the back. The front is usually a bit better. You can come back to this and then talk. But try to use them as possible because, not speaking without your hands is like as if somebody was running without using their arms. If you ever see anybody running without using their arms, they look very weird, right? People that don't talk with their hands, there's something that doesn't resonate. People build a level of connection to that. Do we have any questions? I know we're almost out of time,
There
but
was
if there are any questions,
well, it wasn't so much a question, but there was a comment, I think maybe to help Evelina as well, in that I can see. And it just says to answer Evelina's question, you can use AI meta prompt to ask AI how they will act as devil's advocate and see it from the audience perspective. So maybe try that one, Evelina, if that helps as well. You could use it to maybe be your test in that sense, like you would be doing like a dummy conversation in that sense.
yeah, super helpful.
Yeah. And yeah, I think fantastic. Lots of some really, really good actionable tips that people could use immediately,
As
and
I said, I know it's a lot, and usually with my clients, we'll do like kind of 4 or 5 workshops. One workshop will entirely be on buyer persona. Then we'll go through on like some of the stories. We'll go through their pitching, how you say what you're saying, all of that. So there was a lot to put in here for 1 hour.
yeah, but I think plenty that people can be getting on with, and we would definitely continue this conversation. Obviously, members are coming along regularly, so what you'll see as well, Han will be sharing some feedback around the group. So please do leave your feedback. If there's any particular part of what Zawad covered that you might be interested in the future, it'd be really good if we could obviously explore how that might be possible. Likewise, Zal, I know we're both based in Singapore, so it'd be really cool potentially to do something in person in the future as well. If we want to do some, as you said, like more workshop style things, like where we can bring a portion of members along and or founders, for example, and see, okay, how do we put this in a practical sense for what they're currently doing as well. So keep your eyes peeled for that one, everyone on the call. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah. That's about it, really. Any other questions just before we wrap up? Comments? I know we started a couple of minutes late. That was my fault. Don't see any yet. Cool. And thanks everyone for their input as well. It was really good. I think it's some good interaction in there. We'll definitely pick on a couple of you next time as well and get you to hopefully next time we'll see if you've started practicing some of these frameworks as well, because I think it'd be really good to see. Would love to see if you want to share them with us, that'd be great. Maybe we can forward them on to Zhao as well and see like if you want to try, especially the and but therefore, because I think that could be something you could do, in an hour or two if you just sort of sat down and thought about it, for your own business. Be really good to see how that looks. Thanks, Shreyas. Yeah, see you. Is it lovely talk and wonderful refresher that Zal. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Glad you found it helpful, Shreyas.
Cool. Okay. Well, for that, we'll wrap up. And thanks everyone for joining. And thanks again, Zal, so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Cheers. Thanks so much.
Hopefully see you on the next one, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.